In the quiet of a Colorado Christmas, the unimaginable happened. JonBenét Ramsey, a 6-year-old beauty queen, was found murdered in her family's home in Boulder, Colorado, on December 26, 1996. What should have been a time of family celebration turned into a tragedy that would leave the world in shock. Her death has remained one of the most mysterious and debated cases in American history. Was it an intruder who broke into the Ramsey home? Or was the killer someone closer to her family? As the investigation unfolded, secrets, contradictions, and twists kept the public, the media, and investigators on edge for years. In this case, the line between innocence and guilt became blurred, and a family's grief turned into a national spectacle. Join us as we explore the details of the case, the unanswered questions, and the people who became entangled in this haunting mystery. Stay tuned, and remember to like, comment, and subscribe as we unravel the secrets of this tragic story. It was a picturesque Christmas in Boulder, Colorado. The city, known for its beautiful mountainous backdrop, had seen a blanket of snow cover its streets, turning the town into a winter wonderland. Families were gathered together, enjoying the holiday season, full of joy and warmth. But in one home, the Ramsey family, wealthy, well-known, and seemingly perfect, was about to face a nightmare that no one could have anticipated. The Ramsey family's home, located in a quiet, upscale neighborhood, was the picture of suburban life. On the night of December 25, 1996, they celebrated Christmas with their 2 children, 6-year-old JonBenét and her older brother, Burke. The evening was filled with the usual holiday cheer, decorations, gifts, and laughter. But what no one could have known was that JonBenét, a young girl who had been a darling of the beauty pageant circuit, would not make it through the night. By the morning of December 26, something was terribly wrong. JonBenét was missing from her bed. Her parents, John and Patricia "Patsy" Ramsey, discovered a ransom note in the kitchen, demanding a large sum of money for her safe return. It seemed like a parent's worst nightmare had come true. But what unfolded over the next few hours would make the case even more bizarre. At first, police believed it to be a standard kidnapping. But as they combed through the home and questioned the family, it became clear that there was much more to this story than a simple ransom. As the investigation began, questions about the family's involvement and the oddities in the ransom note began to surface, leaving everyone wondering, could the answer be closer than they thought? This case is filled with twists and turns, and there's still so much to uncover. But before we dive deeper, we want to know where you are watching from. Comment below and let us know what part of the world you're tuning in from. Stay with us as we explore the mystery surrounding the tragic death of JonBenét Ramsey. The morning of December 26, 1996, began like any other in Boulder, Colorado, at least for most people. But inside the Ramsey household, something felt very wrong. Patricia "Patsy" Ramsey went to make coffee around 5:30 a.m. and discovered something that would shock not just her family, but the entire nation. A long, handwritten ransom note placed on the stairs near the kitchen. It claimed that someone had taken their daughter and demanded $118,000 in cash for her return, an amount that later turned out to be nearly identical to John Ramsey's Christmas bonus that year. Confusion quickly turned to panic. Patsy immediately dialed 911, reporting that her daughter, 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey, was missing from her bed in their home. However, the note didn't make sense. It was long, rambling, and oddly specific, more like something written to draw attention than to quietly secure a ransom. Officers arrived at the Ramsey residence on the 700 block of 15th Street shortly after. They began searching the sprawling house, but initially found no signs of forced entry and no trace of JonBenét outside. Then, just 7 hours after she was first reported missing, her father, JonBenét Ramsey, made a devastating discovery. JonBenét's lifeless body in the basement, hidden under blankets near a wine cellar. What investigators saw was heartbreaking and deeply confusing. JonBenét had suffered significant head trauma, and a garrote, a cord wound around a broken paintbrush, had been tied tightly around her neck. Her tiny hands were bound, and duct tape had been placed over her mouth. Authorities later ruled her death a homicide by strangulation associated with blunt force trauma. As the police worked that first day, more contradictions and questions began to emerge. The ransom note appeared staged. There were no obvious signs of an intruder, and every family member was still inside the house at the time of the disappearance. Detectives struggled to piece together what had happened in the hours between Christmas night and early the next morning. Some details made the whole situation feel stranger. The note referenced the ransom amount in a way that hinted at insider knowledge, and the Ramsey home showed no clear point of forced entry. As investigators worked to catalog evidence and interview the family, the initial confusion only deepened. With no clear suspect or motive, the mystery was only just beginning, and the questions raised that day would continue to baffle investigators for decades. The hours following JonBenét Ramsey's disappearance were filled with confusion and mistakes that would haunt the investigation for years. When Patsy Ramsey called 911 at 5:52 a.m. on December 26, 1996, reporting her daughter missing, the initial assumption was that this was a typical kidnapping case. The ransom note found in the Ramsey home gave the impression of a professional criminal demanding $118,000 for JonBenét's return, but everything about the note seemed off. First, the length. FBI experts later called it one of the longest ransom notes in history, with nearly 3 full pages written in strange, convoluted language. Real kidnappers, they noted, typically keep such notes short and to the point. This one, however, seemed as though the author was enjoying the process of writing it. The specific sum of $118,000 stood out. Not $100,000, not $200,000, but exactly $118,000, a figure that closely matched the annual bonus of JonBenét's father, John Ramsey. How could an outsider know such personal information? This pointed to someone with access to the Ramsey family's private finances. The materials used to write the note also raised suspicions. Handwriting experts confirmed that the note was written with a Sharpie marker on paper taken from a notepad belonging to the Ramsey family. Both the pen and notepad were found in the kitchen. How could a kidnapper break into the home, search for paper, and then spend 20 to 30 minutes writing such a lengthy note when every second mattered in a kidnapping? Even more puzzling was the language used in the note, which read like something out of a Hollywood thriller, filled with strange phrases like, "Don't talk to a stray dog about this matter," and "Don't try to grow a brain." These sentences sounded like they were lifted from crime movies, not a real ransom demand. The more investigators examined the note, the more it felt staged. Perhaps the biggest red flag, however, was the signature, or rather, the lack of one. Real kidnappers typically don't sign their ransom notes. Yet this one included a cryptic phrase, SBTC, which some speculated stood for Saved by the Cross, a religious reference. What did this mean? Was it a personal signature from someone familiar with the family? Despite all these inconsistencies, the police continued to treat the situation as a kidnapping, but they made some critical errors that compromised the investigation. The house was never sealed off as a crime scene. Friends and neighbors were invited into the home, unaware they were potentially contaminating crucial evidence. Priscilla, a friend of Patsy's, started cleaning the kitchen counters, touching door handles, and rearranging objects in the house. Every step erased potential clues, from fingerprints to fibers. Meanwhile, the police officer, Rick, arrived at the Ramsey residence, but his initial search was cursory. He glanced into the basement but never opened the door to the wine cellar where JonBenét's body was hidden. This mistake would prove disastrous. The body lay in plain sight, but no one thought to search the wine cellar that morning. By 10 a.m., as the ransom call window passed, John Ramsey, JonBenét's father, began to act in an unusual manner. Instead of focusing on locating his daughter or urging the authorities to step up their search, he appeared surprisingly composed. He even contacted his private pilot, asking him to prepare the family jet for a flight to Atlanta. This action seemed suspicious to the FBI. Why was he organizing a flight when his daughter was still missing? In the end, the early mistakes in the investigation would leave more questions than answers. The Ramsey home, which should have been treated as a sealed crime scene, became a public gathering spot for hours, compounding the confusion. Every unnecessary movement in the house only delayed the search for the truth, and the strange behavior of the Ramsey family raised suspicions about their involvement in the crime. Now let us hear from you. Do you think the police mishandled the case from the start? Write your comments below. Let's get back to the case. As the days passed and the investigation into JonBenét Ramsey's death continued, the police struggled to uncover any solid leads. Despite the mounting pressure, the Ramsey family remained at the center of the investigation. Their behavior, along with several inconsistencies in the case, led to growing suspicion. But after weeks of no progress, the investigation took an unexpected turn. One of the key developments came from a second ransom note that was discovered during the investigation. It was not another handwritten letter, but rather an anonymous phone call that provided a new angle to the case. This phone call claimed that JonBenét was dead and that the ransom note was a staged diversion. At first, this seemed like a strange lead, but investigators couldn't afford to dismiss it completely. Then, in January 1997, an even more significant breakthrough occurred when DNA testing from the scene was used to narrow down possible suspects. The DNA found on JonBenét's clothing did not match any members of the Ramsey family, which temporarily ruled out the Ramseys themselves as suspects. However, this discovery only raised more questions. If the family wasn't involved, then who was? Despite these findings, tensions escalated between the police, the Ramseys, and the public. The police chief, Mark Beckner, later admitted that they had not properly handled the case early on. The crime scene had been contaminated, key evidence overlooked, and critical steps ignored in the search for the truth. It was clear that mistakes had been made, but could they still catch the real killer? As more time passed, public opinion began to shift. The Ramseys became media targets, with some commentators going so far as to suggest that they were responsible for their daughter's death. The media, hungry for answers, pounced on every small detail, scrutinizing the Ramseys' every action and statement. Their public image suffered as rumors and accusations spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, investigators were exploring the possibility of an intruder. There was growing evidence that pointed to a stranger gaining access to the house the night of JonBenét's death. They focused on a potential link with a history of violence and a disturbing pattern of behavior. However, this lead fizzled out, leaving the police at a standstill. One of the more controversial moments in the case came when the Boulder police faced pressure from both the public and local authorities to solve the case quickly. In a series of high-profile interviews, John Ramsey maintained his innocence, repeatedly pleading for the public to withhold judgment until the investigation was complete.
Those of you who may want to ask, let me address very directly, I did not kill my daughter JonBenét.
He even called for law enforcement to focus on finding JonBenét's killer rather than dragging his family through the mud. As new forensic evidence came to light, there was growing frustration on both sides. Law enforcement, unsure where to go next, and the Ramsey family, feeling that they were being unfairly scrutinized. While police pursued various leads, including questioning several suspects, the mystery of JonBenét's killer only deepened. Even after more than 2 decades, the case remains one of the most polarizing and widely debated true crime stories. With no new arrests or convictions, JonBenét's death continues to spark speculation and intrigue. As the investigation into JonBenét Ramsey's death continued, the media quickly turned the case into a sensationalized spectacle, with coverage dominating news outlets across the country. The Ramsey family, already grieving the loss of their daughter, suddenly found themselves thrust into the public eye. The relentless attention from the media, coupled with the intense pressure from law enforcement, created a perfect storm of confusion, misinformation, and public scrutiny. From the very beginning, the media cast a spotlight on the Ramsey family, particularly focusing on John and Patsy Ramsey. The couple's behavior, including their repeated interviews and public pleas for JonBenét's safe return, were analyzed and dissected. Some reporters and commentators began to speculate that the family was hiding something, questioning their every move and reaction. Was their composure a sign of guilt? Or was it simply the shock of a grieving family that had just lost a child? These questions became the fuel for endless media debates. Despite the ongoing investigation, the press was quick to latch onto the most sensational and controversial angles. From conspiracy theories involving a family cover-up to the wild speculation about possible intruders, it seemed that every possible explanation was being considered, except for the one that could have been the truth. The case had all the ingredients of a true crime mystery, and the media took full advantage of the public's fascination with the case. As details, both accurate and misleading, were published, the Ramsey family found it impossible to escape the scrutiny. In the midst of all this, there was growing frustration within the Boulder community. Local residents, who had known the Ramseys for years, found themselves divided. Some believed the family was being wrongly accused and that the police had bungled the investigation. Others, however, felt that the Ramseys were hiding the truth, and that the answers to JonBenét's murder lay within their own home. With public opinion so sharply split, the media only added to the confusion by amplifying the doubts and suspicions surrounding the case. The ongoing press coverage became so invasive that it affected the investigation itself. Law enforcement expressed concern that the constant media attention could jeopardize their ability to find the killer, while also drawing more focus to the family's behavior than the actual facts of the case. Meanwhile, the Ramsey family's attorneys warned the media and the public that until the investigation was completed, they should refrain from making accusations. The public reaction was also influenced by the fact that JonBenét was a beauty queen, and much of her childhood had been spent in the spotlight. The media's portrayal of her as a pageant princess was used to fuel both sympathy and suspicion. Her image, from the glittering dresses to the oversized bows in her hair, became synonymous with the case. Was she simply a victim of a tragic accident? Or was her tragic death somehow linked to the world of child pageants, where competition and pressures could lead to something darker? As the years passed, JonBenét Ramsey's murder became a case of increasing frustration. Despite years of investigations, re-examinations of evidence, and changing theories, no one has ever been convicted of the crime. The case remains unsolved, and it continues to captivate the public, with each new development adding to the growing list of questions and theories that still surround her tragic death. The case also saw its fair share of suspects over the years, many of whom were either ruled out or never charged. The most well-known of these was a man named John Mark Carr, who claimed in 2006 that he had killed JonBenét, though no physical evidence ever supported his confession. Investigators quickly dismissed his story, and Carr was never formally charged. In 2016, the Boulder Police Department confirmed that they were still working on the case, testing new DNA evidence and following up on new leads. However, progress has been slow, and without a clear suspect or motive, the case has grown colder over time. Today, the JonBenét Ramsey case remains a haunting mystery, a tragic story of a child's death that continues to fuel debates, documentaries, and public fascination. The questions that have persisted from the very beginning, who killed JonBenét, what happened in that house, remain unanswered. It is a case that will likely continue to be investigated, discussed, and debated for years to come. The JonBenét Ramsey case remains one of the most infamous and enduring mysteries in true crime history, but its impact goes far beyond the details of the investigation. The case has raised critical questions about how we view child beauty pageants, media sensationalism, and the role of the justice system in high-profile cases. First and foremost, JonBenét's death forced a public reckoning with the child beauty pageant industry. The intense scrutiny of JonBenét's life as a 6-year-old pageant queen sparked debates about the pressures placed on young girls in these competitions. Her appearance in highly sexualized beauty contests drew attention to a world where the boundaries between childhood innocence and adult expectations can often blur. Many people questioned whether this environment was appropriate for young children and whether it might contribute to harmful pressures and unrealistic standards. Since the case, there have been more conversations about the ethics and psychology of child beauty pageants and their long-term impact on self-esteem. In addition to the ethical concerns surrounding the pageant world, JonBenét's case also highlighted the role of media in shaping public opinion. The constant media coverage, often sensationalized, painted the Ramsey family as suspects long before any official charges were brought. The media frenzy took on a life of its own, and the intense public focus on the family made it difficult for law enforcement to do their job. It also showcased the dangers of trial by media, where the press becomes more influential than the legal system, leaving the family vulnerable to damaging accusations. The lesson learned here is that media bias and speculation can distort the narrative of a crime, leaving lasting harm on those involved. Moreover, the JonBenét Ramsey case is a stark reminder of the importance of proper police procedure and the need for diligence in investigations. From the critical errors made early on, such as not securing the crime scene and allowing too many people inside the house, to the later difficulties in handling evidence, this case serves as an example of how early mistakes can affect the trajectory of an investigation. It underscores how important it is to follow protocol, no matter the circumstances. Finally, JonBenét's death has raised broader questions about justice, accountability, and the role of families in high-profile criminal cases. The public's interest in the Ramsey family and the ensuing debate about their possible involvement in the crime led many to reflect on the ways in which we judge and assign guilt, particularly when emotions are high and information is scarce. This case has sparked conversations about due process and the presumption of innocence, reminding us all of the importance of objective investigation and fair treatment for those involved in tragic events. As we conclude this exploration of the JonBenét Ramsey case, we are left with more questions than answers. Despite decades of investigation, public speculation, and legal battles, the tragic murder of a 6-year-old girl still remains an open wound for her family, her community, and the nation. Her story has become more than just a mystery. It has sparked debates about justice, media influence, and the world of child pageants. It has made us question the integrity of our legal system and the pressure placed on children in the public eye. But most importantly, it reminds us of the fragility of life and the impact that one senseless act of violence can have on an entire world. Though JonBenét's killer has never been brought to justice, the case has left an undeniable mark on true crime history. It continues to captivate the public's imagination, fueling new theories, documentaries, and discussions. The mystery surrounding her death remains unresolved, but it serves as a reminder that justice is sometimes a long and uncertain journey. For JonBenét's family, the pain of losing their daughter is compounded by the constant media scrutiny and public questioning that never seems to end. Patsy Ramsey passed away in 2006 without ever seeing the case closed, and their daughter's legacy lives on, not just in their hearts but in the hearts of many who continue to seek the truth. Let us know what you think about the ongoing mystery. Do you believe justice will ever be served for JonBenét, or will the truth remain hidden forever? Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated on more in-depth investigations into unsolved cases. We'll see you next time.